There's a certain kind of silence that only exists in homes that have held a family together for decades. A lived-in silence. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock above the stove, floorboards that remember footsteps long after children grow up and leave. I was standing at my kitchen sink that afternoon, rinsing out a coffee mug I'd already forgotten to finish, when I saw my daughter Emily's car pull into the driveway. I remember smiling at first, because no matter how old your children get, part of you still lights up when they come home, even unexpectedly. The sunlight was falling across the front yard in long golden stripes, catching the wind chimes your father hung there before he passed. They made that soft little sound I used to love. Used to. I dried my hands on a dish towel and glanced at the clock. 3:30. Too early for a casual visit, too quiet for family dinner plans. And then I noticed the folder tucked under her arm when she stepped out of the car. Thick, blue, held tightly against her chest. Something about the way she carried it made my stomach tighten before she even walked through the door. You know how mothers are. Sometimes we feel the storm before the clouds arrive. "Mom," she called as she came inside. Her voice sounded cheerful, carefully cheerful. I looked up and smiled anyway. "Hi, sweetheart." She leaned down and kissed my cheek quickly, already distracted, already glancing toward the kitchen table like she had come here for a reason and didn't want to lose her nerve. Todd wasn't with her. That surprised me. Usually, where Todd went, Emily followed these days. Or maybe it was the other way around. I honestly couldn't tell anymore. "You busy?" she asked. "No more than usual." I tried to laugh lightly, but something inside me had already gone quiet. She placed the folder on the table and sat down across from me. Not beside me, across from me, like a banker or a salesperson. I remember noticing that detail so clearly later. Funny what sticks in your mind after your heart gets involved. She folded her hands together tightly, then smiled. That smile. Lord, if you're a mother, you know the difference between your child's real smile and the one they put on when they want something. This one never reached her eyes. "Mom," she said softly, "Todd and I have been thinking about the future." The future. People always say that word when they're about to ask for something in the present. I stayed quiet. Outside, I could hear a lawnmower somewhere down the street, a dog barking faintly, ordinary sounds, and somehow that made the moment feel even stranger. Emily opened the folder carefully and slid a stack of papers toward me. "It's just paperwork," she said quickly. "Nothing bad. We're only trying to make sure the house is protected." Protected. Another careful word. I looked down at the papers but didn't touch them yet. Legal language, paragraphs, highlighted tabs. My name typed across the top. Mary Thompson, owner. My chest tightened slightly. "I don't understand," I said. Emily exhaled too fast, like she'd rehearsed this conversation in the car. "Well, you know how things are these days. Taxes, probate, nursing homes. If something ever happened, the state could take the house. Todd talked to someone who explained everything." Todd talked to someone. Of course he did. I nodded slowly while she kept talking. Something about protection, something about avoiding complications, something about keeping the home in the family. But I barely heard the words anymore, because suddenly I understood what was sitting in front of me. They wanted the deed, not later. Now. I looked around my kitchen. The yellow curtains I sewed myself in 1989. The scratch on the cabinet where Emily dropped a mixing bowl when she was 13. The tiny pencil marks near the pantry doorway measuring her height year after year. This house wasn't just property. It was birthdays, Christmas mornings, hospital bills paid one paycheck at a time, a marriage, a funeral, a life. I worked 32 years beside my husband to keep this roof over our heads. 32 years. And now my daughter sat across from me speaking about it like paperwork. I felt something crack quietly inside me then. Not loudly, not dramatically, just softly, like ice giving way under too much weight. Emily kept talking faster and faster, probably mistaking my silence for confusion instead of heartbreak. "You'd still live here, obviously," she added quickly. "Nothing would really change." Nothing would really change, I thought to myself. That's what people say right before everything changes. For a moment, I wanted to ask her the question burning in my chest. When did I become a problem to solve? But I didn't, because mothers do something dangerous sometimes. We protect our children even when they're the ones hurting us, so instead, I picked up the pen. Emily blinked, almost startled. "You want to sign now?" I looked at her, really looked at her. The little freckles near her nose she'd had since childhood, the nervous tapping of her fingers, the tiny flicker of relief already forming behind her eyes. And suddenly, I understood something. She thought I didn't see what this really was. That hurt more than the papers themselves. I smiled gently. "Of course, sweetheart," I said. Her shoulders dropped instantly. Relief, pure relief. I signed every page calmly while she watched. Mary Thompson, Mary Thompson, Mary Thompson. Each signature felt strangely steady, like my hand knew something my heart was still catching up to. When I finished, Emily let out a breath so quietly she probably thought I didn't hear it. But I did. Mothers hear everything. She gathered the papers quickly, almost too quickly, and stood from the table. Then the moment happened that I still replay in my mind some nights. She pulled out her phone before she even reached the front door, and she smiled. A real smile this time. "Todd," she said softly, turning partly away from me. She signed them. She signed them. Not Mom, not Mary. She. I stood there in my own kitchen holding the dish towel in my hands while my daughter whispered into the phone like they'd just won something. And maybe they thought they had. But as I watched her through the fading afternoon light, I felt something unexpected settle inside me. Not anger, not yet. Something quieter, something colder. Because the truth was, Emily had no idea what I had actually signed, and for the first time in a very long time, I decided not to tell her. After Emily left that afternoon, the house became unbearably quiet. Not peaceful quiet, heavy quiet. The kind that settles into the walls after something important breaks, even if nobody says it out loud. I stood at the kitchen window long after her car disappeared down the street, still holding that same dish towel in my hands. I remember realizing the coffee in my mug had gone cold hours earlier, but somehow that felt fitting, because something inside me had gone cold too. I walked slowly through the house that evening, touching things absent-mindedly, as if I needed proof that my life had actually happened there. The hallway table David built with his own hands, the faded family photo from our trip to Cape Cod when Emily was 9, the little burn mark near the stove from Thanksgiving 1998 when the turkey grease caught fire and we laughed until we cried. A whole life lived inside these walls, and suddenly, I couldn't stop hearing Emily's voice. She signed them. Not, Mom understood. Mom agreed. Mom wants this. Just, she signed them. I sat down on the edge of my bed and stared at the floor for a long time that night. And one painful thought kept circling in my mind. This didn't begin with those papers. No, it began years ago. In tiny moments I ignored because love makes mothers blind sometimes. I thought about family dinners where Todd and Emily suddenly stopped talking when I walked into the room. At the time, I told myself I was imagining things. I thought about the way Todd always asked strange questions about my savings. How much is left on the mortgage? You still handling your own bills? Wouldn't it be easier if someone helped manage everything? Manage everything. Such harmless words on the surface. But now I heard the meaning underneath them. I remembered Emily insisting I give her copies of my bank information in case of emergencies. I remembered Todd joking one Christmas about how this house will be worth a fortune someday. And I remembered the way they exchanged quick little glances whenever I talked about staying independent, as if my independence complicated their plans. I couldn't believe what I was hearing inside my own memories. It's strange how betrayal works. At first, it feels sudden, but then your mind starts rearranging old moments like puzzle pieces, and suddenly the picture becomes impossible to ignore. For days, I didn't call Emily, and she didn't call me either. That hurt more than I expected, because if signing away my home was truly about protecting me, wouldn't she have checked on me afterward? Wouldn't she have asked if I was all right? Instead, silence. The kind of silence that tells you people only come close when they need something. One afternoon, I found myself standing in the attic holding an old cardboard box filled with Emily's school papers, construction paper cards, crayon drawings, little handwritten notes that said things like, "I love you, Mommy, forever." I sat on the attic floor crying so quietly nobody could hear me. Not dramatic sobbing, just tired tears, the kind that come from mourning someone who's still alive. I kept wondering where I lost her. Was it after her father died? After she married Todd? Or had I simply spent too many years mistaking dependence for love? I thought motherhood meant giving everything. Your sleep, your youth, your money, your patience. And maybe it does. But nobody warns you that some people get so used to receiving, they stop noticing what they're taking. A week later, Emily finally called. Not to ask how I was feeling, not to visit. She called because one of the utility bills still had my name on it. I listened quietly while she explained how transferring everything sooner would make things cleaner. Cleaner. Another careful word. I stared out the window while she talked, watching rain slide slowly down the glass, and for the first time in my life, I heard my daughter speaking to me the way people speak about unfinished paperwork. Not like a mother, not even like a person sometimes, just responsibility, just obligation, something to organize before it became inconvenient. When the call ended, I sat very still in my chair. Then I did something Emily never expected me to do. I called a lawyer, not angrily, not emotionally, calmly, very calmly. The young receptionist asked what the appointment was regarding, and I remember looking around my living room before answering, at the wedding photo above the fireplace, at David's old reading chair, at 40 years of sacrifice sitting quietly around me. Then I said softly, "I think my daughter believes I don't understand what she made me sign." There was a long pause on the other end, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel confused anymore. I felt awake. Over the next several days, I began putting everything in order quietly, carefully. I gathered old documents, opened accounts Emily didn't know existed, read every page people assumed I never would, and little by little, the fear inside me started changing shape. It became clarity, because the truth finally stood plain in front of me. They weren't preparing for my future. They were preparing for my absence. For the day my opinions no longer mattered. For the day this house would belong to them in every way, except emotionally. But what neither Emily nor Todd understood was this: old age does not make a woman foolish, and heartbreak has a way of sharpening your vision. A few evenings later, I stood alone in the hallway outside Emily's old bedroom. The late sunlight stretched across the floorboards in soft orange lines. I touched the doorway gently and whispered something I never thought I'd say about my own child. "I still love you," I said quietly, "but I see you now." And somehow, that was the moment everything truly began to change. People think betrayal arrives like thunder, loud, violent, impossible to miss. But sometimes, it arrives quietly at your kitchen table, wearing your daughter's smile. A week after my meeting with the lawyer, Emily called and invited me to dinner. Her voice sounded lighter than it had in months, almost cheerful. I knew why. She believed the hard part was over. Todd believed it too. I could hear it underneath every overly polite word they suddenly used with me. "Mom, you should relax more. You've done enough. We just want to help you now." Help me. I thought to myself, Funny how people become generous after they think they own something. The dinner was at their house across town. I remember the sky was gray that evening, rain clouds hanging low over the highway, the kind of weather that makes everything feel heavier somehow. Emily opened the door, smiling warmly when I arrived. Too warmly. Todd stood behind her, holding a wine glass. "There she is," he said brightly, like we were celebrating something. And in a way, they were. The dining room smelled like rosemary chicken and candles Emily had lit near the windows. Everything looked beautiful, carefully beautiful. I sat quietly through dinner, listening to them talk about renovations they wanted to make someday. A bigger kitchen island, new flooring, opening up the living room walls. At first, they spoke cautiously, then more confidently, because little by little, people reveal themselves when they think the prize is already theirs. And every time they talked about the house, they spoke as if I were no longer inside it. I pushed peas around my plate while Todd described turning my sewing room into an office. My sewing room. The room where I made Emily's Halloween costumes by hand. The room where I sat, crying after David's funeral, because it was the only place quiet enough to fall apart. An office. I looked up slowly, and for the first time, I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt clarity. Deep, steady clarity. Emily noticed my silence. "You okay, Mom?" Mom. The words sounded strange coming from her now. I dabbed my napkin carefully against my mouth and smiled softly. "Yes," I said. "I'm just listening." Todd chuckled lightly. "Well, hopefully all this legal stuff will make life easier for everyone going forward." Everyone. Not you, not Mom, everyone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and suddenly I realized something important. They truly thought I was weak, not because I was old, because I was kind. There's a difference. Kind women spend years being underestimated. People mistake gentleness for blindness, patience for stupidity, love for surrender. But they are not the same thing. Dinner ended with coffee in the living room. Rain tapped softly against the windows while Emily curled her legs beneath her on the couch like she used to as a teenager. For one painful second, I saw my little girl again, and my heart almost broke all over. Then Todd asked the question, "So, did your attorney file everything yet?" There it was, not concern, not curiosity about me, just the house, always the house. I set my coffee cup down carefully, very carefully, and then I looked at both of them, really looked, at my daughter who once slept curled against my chest during thunderstorms, at the man beside her who looked at my life like square footage and market value, and I spoke quietly. "The papers you brought me," I said, "were incomplete." The room went still. Todd frowned immediately. "What do you mean, incomplete?" I folded my hands in my lap. Before Emily ever brought those documents to my kitchen table, before Todd ever called his friend about protecting assets, before they ever decided what should happen to my home, I had already spoken to my lawyer months earlier. After David died, I made arrangements. Real arrangements, not rushed paperwork slid across a kitchen table. Careful ones, legal ones. I watched confusion spread slowly across Emily's face, and for the first time in weeks, she looked afraid. "The house," I said softly, "was already placed into a protected trust." Todd straightened immediately. "What?" His voice came out sharper than he intended. I continued calmly. "The documents I signed transferred nothing without the trust authorization attached to them." Silence. Heavy silence. Emily stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. I think that hurt her, but not nearly as much as finally recognizing her hurt me. Todd started talking fast after that. Too fast. "There must be some misunderstanding." "There isn't." Emily's face had gone pale. "But why would you do that without telling me?" That question sat between us for a long moment, and I realized something heartbreaking. She still didn't understand, even now. So I answered honestly. "Because somewhere along the way," I said quietly, You stopped asking what made me feel safe and started asking what made things easier for you. Emily looked down immediately, and for the first time all evening, neither of them had anything to say. No rehearsed explanations, no polished concern, no careful wording, just silence. Raw silence. I stood slowly, reaching for my coat. Emily's voice cracked slightly behind me. "Mom." I paused near the doorway but didn't turn around yet, and then she asked the question every mother secretly fears hearing too late. "Are you angry with me?" I closed my eyes for 1 second, just one, because anger would have been easier, cleaner. But what I felt was grief. Grief for the daughter I thought I raised. Grief for the years I confused being needed with being loved. Grief for the moment I realized some people only value your sacrifices once they think they can inherit them. Finally, I turned back toward her. "No," I said gently. "I'm awake now." Emily started crying then, real crying this time. Not polished, not strategic, but I had learned something painful about tears. Sometimes people cry because they hurt you, and sometimes they cry because they finally understand they can't. There's a difference there, too. I left quietly that night. No screaming, no revenge, no dramatic ending. Just rain falling softly as I walked to my car. And for the first time in years, I felt peaceful. A month later, I sold the house. Not because they forced me to, because I chose to. I bought a small cottage near the water 3 states away where nobody knew my name and nobody needed anything from me except conversation. On my final evening inside the old house, I sat alone on the living room floor surrounded by empty walls. The sunset spilled gold across the hardwood floors David installed himself 30 years earlier. I could still hear echoes there. Birthday candles, laughter, arguments, baby footsteps, life. I rested my hand against the wall softly and whispered goodbye. Not just to the house, to the version of myself who believed love meant endless sacrifice. And as darkness slowly filled the rooms around me, I realized something I wish more mothers understood before heartbreak teaches them first. Sometimes the most loving thing a woman can do is stop allowing herself to be used.